Welcome to Permission to Be Human, the podcast. I'm your host, Mel Finlater, mother, coach, and curator of Permission to Be Human, the company and community. If you're a mom, know a mom, or want to be a mom, and you crave getting out in the world to make a difference, then you're in the right place. This is a space for moms like you to connect with yourself, your purpose, and your big, audacious dreams. Because when you feel your best, you can better you, your family, and the wider world. Let's do this. I'm so excited to present to you Caryl today on this podcast. She is our first interview with someone who is going to be explaining a really practical tool to us and helping us know how to use it to change the stories that are in our mind that are not serving us in the way that we hope they would. So I'm so excited to introduce you to Caryl. Hi, Caryl. Thanks for coming today. We have a Caryl Williams Love with me today, and I'm so excited to have her here. Caryl and I met in our Applied Positive Psychology course last year, and Carol's been doing some work with me on helping me manage the stories in my head and kind of retraining my brain a little bit to be of better service to me. And it's been amazing. And every time I am doing a coaching session or applying some of the work that I've learned, Caryl comes into my head and I am like, oh, we need to share what she knows all about havening, which is our topic of today, and how to support ourselves with it. So thank you for coming today, Caryl.
Oh, my pleasure. I love that idea that I'm in your head, hopefully in a good way. But I definitely love the fact that you're changing those stories. Yes. As long as you're saying, hi, Caryl, with a smile, we're good to go.
We're good. Good. It's a good Caryl in my head.
Nice.
Awesome. So do you want to tell us a little bit about you and your life and maybe what lights you up?
You always have the best questions and stuff. My name is Caryl Williams Love. I was trained and still working as an interpreter for the deaf for the last almost 30 years. I was constantly working in professional development, for myself. And about 8 years ago, kind of stumbled across EFT tapping and wanted to learn more about that. And in that process, started training to be a coach and not even realizing that was like really a thing, and just really applying it to my own life. And there came a time where EFT wasn't working to the level that I needed it to work. And so I came across havening, and havening has been just amazing. It allows me and others to be unstuck in our stories and to really remove that attachment, that emotional trigger, and as well as just the procrastination and the self-sabotaging behaviors and stuff, that whole laundry list of actions that we tend to do that keep us from getting what we want. And havening in a very gentle way allows us to change those stories and to unplug from those emotional triggers so that we get into action, right? And it works really in our nervous system. So what I really love about it too is it works for three things. So it can work at removing what we've encoded in a traumatic event, that story, like you say, story that's really stuck. It can also be used in a way, and of course that's with a certified practitioner. Also with a certified practitioner, it can be used in a growth way, right? We're working towards enhancing productivity, performance, working towards goals, that kind of thing. And then there's a third way that as you're learning, and so for you, Mel, as you were able to, I imagine, take those steps that we were doing together, then in any moment, you can use it as a self-regulating tool to just download or downgrade in the moment anytime your emotions are getting a little heavy or the outside world is getting to be too much. It's like the perfect timeout, right? That you in the palm of your hands can gift yourself, and you can gift to your children and others around you in the moment. It's amazing. So that lights me up because I've lived my life so stuck. And as I started learning about this and being able to feel the results and seeing the results for others, what lights me up is collecting smiles. As you know, you've helped me figure that phrase out. And what I mean by that is when I get to see somebody go from stuck, stressed, frustrated to smiling and happy, that lights me up to no end. So sharing this magicalness that we have in our hands to be able to, in that moment, feel better and let that be that ripple effect that we're spreading out in the world so that everybody feels good in the moment, that lights me up.
What an amazing thing to light you up. I mean, spread some more smiles around the world. I think that's amazing.
That's my goal.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Brilliant. And that's a great description what you just gave of what havening is. And I thought it might be useful for me to share a little bit of our experience together. I'm quite happy to share my story as like an example. So okay. One of the things Caryl was working with me on is it was about 2 years before we started working together. I had an ankle injury and ended up having surgery on my ankle. And I've always been a soccer player my entire life, and it's been like a huge thing for me. And one of those things that as a mom, I really needed to feel me, really. And I stopped after this ankle injury because, of course, I was healing, and then I moved across the world, and there's a whole larger story there. And I connected that injury and that trauma to my everything else that was going wrong in my life as well at the time. So Caryl really worked with me I got to this point where I was like, I'm going to try out for the team here. I'm going to try out for the soccer team here. And I don't know how that's going to go, because every time I think about going on the field, I literally have the image in my head of hurting myself. And I know that the way brains works is that if I just think about that, I'm going to do it. Like, it's highly more likely that I'm going to injure myself again if I think I am. So Caryl worked with me doing havening, and really got me to kind of disconnect those two things and to really believe in myself. And I started going for runs and like had these like affirmations that I was saying in my head, which I still say to this day. If I think I'm gonna I was at a boot camp this morning and I was like dying, and and I got to get to this point where I start to think like, I can't do this. And then instead of saying I can or whatever, literally the same phrase goes in, which for me is, I'm strong, I'm brave, I'm proud, and I'm worthy. And it took a while. Caryl, we can talk about that later. It wasn't just I'm worthy right away. We worked up to that a little bit, but in fact, I used to stick in, my daughter's name is Ira. I used to stick in Ira is worthy. And that worked very well. She was worthy of a mom who was out there doing that. I was like, I can believe that. Yeah. Anyways, so I say those phrases and then I'm like, yeah, I'm good. And I'm going, because my brain's like, yeah, you're on fire. So Caryl really helped me using one-to-one with her to get to this point where I now, every once in a while, I still have a thought, or I think about an ankle if I see something I might hit or whatever. And like, my brain is programmed enough to like think those 4 phrases and be able to move past them, basically, which is amazing. And I'm not even doing specifically havening in that moment, but if I was, and if I could run at the same time as doing that, then I would. But I might actually fall if I tried to do that. So that's more of an after thing in that exact moment. But so that's one way we used havening together. And I thought I'd just give that as a little example. So that was our kind of one-to-one.
And I'm so glad that was so successful for you, and to see you, to get your text saying that you were, trying out for the team was just so exciting. I mean, that brings me sparkles and joy and dancing to no end. Yeah. And being able to, part of all of that too, is that I'm also a neuroencoding specialist. And like you mentioned, we're both certified in positive psychology and all that research stuff. It's all so woven in. And we know that when we can catch those thoughts and we can shift those thoughts, so that what you're able to do is make those changes, because it is our brain. It's all of those thoughts, those experiences and everything that we've had in the past. 90% of our current actions or inactions, thoughts, are driven by those stories. And so when those stories are hijacking us, saying we can't, or they're holding on to overwhelm or an event that we've deemed to have a negative meaning, then that's what's going to lead us forward. Willpower can only get us so far. It's those recordings that 90%, some people say 95, even if you go at the low end of 90%, even if I said 80%, that's a really strong pull towards going towards your goals or trying to get through this overwhelm in the moment, right? Yeah. It's what those stories are that are embedded and encoded into our brains. So a big part of this also in the work that I do with people and in education I try to give people is all of those different pieces of positive psychology and neuroscience, which is that whole, what's the story that's going on? Can we change that meaning that we've embedded, right? Because our brains are neuroplastic. It's not, that's what it is done. Otherwise, babies with what we're born with would have no other meanings, right? So we know that. And finally, science caught up with that in the last, 15 to 20 years. And it's so exciting to hear you say that now you're catching those thoughts and shifting so that you're not allowing them to encode and give yourself a new memory, a new story that gives you less than. So that's awesome.
For sure. So awesome. And what I really love about what you just said and how you describe neuroscience and these big technical words is that the way you describe it is very empowering, so like if 90% is these stories, they're not our fault. We don't need to be beating ourselves up for having these because we all have them, right? Exactly. And we also have the potential and the possibility to change them. And that is huge, right? It's like, we're not like, victim, I've got all these things, well, I'm screwed, right? No, actually, we can change all these things. And especially for moms, which is who I tend to work with, our stories are like, there's so many all around worthiness and self-belief and confidence, and so many. I could go on a list of all the stories that we've been kind of trained to believe, right? And it really excites me, like how we can shift those. And I'm sure Caryl and I will be working together a lot more on my stories, I'm sure, over the years, because it's an ongoing journey and it's not something that just we flip a switch and it changes overnight. So yes. So tell us more about, we've dug into like what we're really excited about it and how our brain's working, but like, what is havening anyways? What is that? Like, what would it look like?
Havening is a psychosensory modality, meaning it's our psychology, our beliefs and our thoughts of who we are in the world, who other people are in the world, and if the world is safe, our psychology, and our bodies somatically. What are reactions? The heart racing, the sweating, the, any way our body might be reacting to something, right? So as a modality, there are 3 locations. It's all using our hands. It's using the touch from our fingertips and in certain parts of our body. And so as we're applying that touch, what's actually happening in our brain is that we're slowing our brain down into delta waves. So if you know anything about the different levels of your brain waves, we're going down all the way down into the delta wave, which is very, very slow. And in that, we're able to kind of open up where those previous, let me go more into it as far as with the self-havening. So when you're self-havening, your nervous system, say, you're trying to handle, getting the children to all their events in that moment, trying to deal with something from work, trying to get dinner on the table, trying to deal with COVID, trying to, it could be any number of things. The list can sometimes be very short. There could be one thing, and it just was the tip of the iceberg for the day, right? We know that. So what's happening is in our nervous system, we have two tracks. So it's the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. Now, sympathetic means it's kind of like a car. The gas is going. It's like, hair to the wind, blow back, right? And we want to shift it down into more the parasympathetic, which is the more relaxed. And our bodies are doing this all the time. That's how we're breathing, right? When we inhale, we're engaging in the sympathetic. And then when we exhale, we're engaging in the parasympathetic. That's at the slowest basic level. Well, how often is it when we are in a state of stress that we are holding our breath? And we notice that suddenly our shoulders are up at our ears. Like, that's my place. That's my, it's like, oh, okay. Right. That's why breathing, when people just say, hey, take a moment, take a pause, take a breath. So havening is getting our system into that parasympathetic much quicker. And so what we're going to do is, I'll show you some of the steps. So we're using our hands. And the first one, this is very common now with COVID. We're talking about, right, washing our hands to the happy birthday. So we're just doing this gently. Just notice. And we're calming down our heart rate as well, right? So we're not looking at doing this. It's not a fast thing. It's just a gentle pace. So this is havening, self-havening with your hands.
And this is a great one, I have to say, Caryl, because speaking of COVID times, we're on Zoom a lot. And I just move my hands down. Nobody can even see me doing it. I do it almost every single Zoom call.
It's the best, right?
Yeah.
And speaking of that, before before we jump to the other two locations, is that especially on these meetings, or even when we're out in public and we go back to any kind of in person, this is a very natural, people do this all the time, right? So you're not only calming down your nervous system, but if people around you are getting a little bit out of control in any level of way, we have mirror neurons in our brain. And so that is just picking it up. And so what we see is happening. We don't have to actually be havening ourselves. We can see somebody else havening, and that's calming down our nervous system. So you're gifting anybody around you. So when your children are going a little bit, out of control, once we end up matching their level of energy, right? When they're, then we're like, stop, we are getting up to them. Imagine we're going to be doing this, or we're doing this, which I'll show you that other one in a moment. And as we start noticing, where are my shoulders? What's my breathing? Then our children, our spouses, our coworkers can then also, their little mirror neurons are going to start watching, and they're going to shift over into their parasympathetic too. So it's great. I love that. But I'm always doing it too, below camera, or nowadays, if I really want the person in the meeting to kind of notice, I will proudly be doing this on camera, or doing this one on camera. Yeah. So love the self-havening. Okay. So the other one, as I said, showed, it's down your arms. We're starting the shoulder down to the elbow, and our thumbs are kind of up top. And what's happening here is we want to go in one direction. It's kind of like if you had a cat in your lap. Cat's going to be happy if we're going this way, but if we start going up and back, the cat may not be so happy. So that can kind of trigger. Now, if you try it and you see, there's some people who are good with this up and down. If it feels nice, do it up and down. But as a general, we go in one direction. Okay. So the third location that you can apply your self-havening is going to be on your face. And again, this is your own, touching. And so during COVID times, depending on when people are watching this, we're always washing our hands first, and you're not applying it on somebody else without, permission always. But if it's your child, you're just making sure your hands are washed. So it's across your forehead. Again, you're using the fingertips. and you're just stroking outward. And then you just kind of come, what feels good across your cheeks or your face? Which is your favorite to do, Mel, on your face?
It's probably the one under the eyes. I'm gonna get you to describe it in even more words, just for the sake of anybody listening to only audio on this.
Okay. So
So
what
you've
we're
got your
doing is
face and what are you doing up on your forehead here?
so both hands are, your fingertips are meeting at the center of your forehead, and you're stroking gently outward towards your temple. And then you meet back again in the middle and stroke outward towards your temple. And it should just be a nice pace and a nice pressure. That feel good?
Mm-hmm.
And then you can kind of just rotate your hands down around your temple and then pick it up again at the bridge of your nose. So each hand on each side of the nose, and just kind of stroke outwardly, lightly under the eyes and down the cheek, so that your fingertips and the finger pads of your fingers are touching. And if it feels good, then just let the whole palm touch, whatever feels nice. Well,
Like a little
and so,
facial.
yes, it's a mini facial. Well, if you see babies, if you hold a newborn or an infant, they love this calming, havening touch across their foreheads and their cheeks, right?
Yeah.
We're instinctual. We know these natural techniques to do that are calming and soothing.
Yeah.
So now we're using them. Yeah.
Brilliant. So we've got our couple of face ones. We've got our hand washing back and forth, and then almost like you're hugging yourself and stroking downwards.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cross
Which
your
one's
arms,
your
give
favorite?
yourself a hug. I kind of rotate around.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in that moment, I'm just kind of allowing my hands to go wherever, because sometimes it feels like it's too long. So I'll go a little bit on my hands, and I like to make this figure 8 on my hands. This is just me. But with that energy work, a lot of people who study energy work, they show that there's energy in figure 8s, the infinity and stuff. So it's whatever feels good that you're doing in the moment. How about you? What do you like?
My typical is my hands. I'm not as much this one. I think as a woman with a larger chest, I find it sometimes it's a lot of effort, actually. And I like the face stuff as well. Yeah, it's all very good. And actually, so this is the self-havening style, what you're describing now. And I actually used it yesterday I flew back from Alberta to BC. And on the way out, it was fine. We were on an airplane. It was my first time on an airplane since COVID had hit. And so I was, anxious, but the way there was okay. It was only 2 and 2 in the rows. So it was me and my son. And then on the way back, it was just me and my son, but it was 3 and 3. So I had someone sitting right next to me, closer than any person has ever been in the last 2 years that isn't in my family. And I could feel myself just so anxious. And I sat in the middle because my son wasn't vaccinated and whatever. I was like, it's the safest for me to be here. But and I could feel myself getting kind of worked up about it. Right. But, there's nothing I can do about it in that situation, and then I was like, okay, what can I do that this man won't think is too strange? And so he was just reading his book or whatever, didn't even really kind of pretended I wasn't there. And I just started going like this because I thought, okay, that's all right. And I was like, that's good. Yeah. Okay. And then I did my hands, and I only did it for probably a couple of minutes, but it really did it. It got me to the point where I could move on to thinking about something else and not my heart rate was slower, and it helped me get through that because, depending on the situation, depending on your mood, depending on what trigger you have, whatever, it could, you can go into a full blown panic attack, but this kind of just, yeah, okay, back in the room. I'm good now. We're fine.
And what were you doing while you were havening? So I noticed that. So for people on audio only, you were using the one across your forehead or from the center of your forehead outward. And what else were you doing while you were doing that?
I was
What were
breathing
you
as
thinking
well. So
about?
I was intentionally breathing. Mostly I was actually trying not to think about anything. And it wasn't an affirmation one for me. It was literally like just focus on, it was a bit of a meditation last evening, right? I was like just breathing, thinking about my breath and doing that, so that my thoughts didn't go anywhere else, basically.
Yeah.
And I think I just very quickly moved on from that. I think because we've done it a few times, my body was used to that response. It managed to get me into that place pretty quickly. But self-havening, I think that's why your little Caryl comes up in my head a lot, because, in a coaching session with someone where they might have a very emotional response to something that comes up, you're talking about something very personal and like a story comes out and they're like, oh, I didn't realize how like ingrained that was, and the emotions all flow, right? Which is great, like permission to be human, right? That's my business name, and
Exactly.
I'm a strong believer in the need for all those emotions. And what I love is that it's like, okay, and here's a tool to help yourself move through those emotions so that you don't just push them down, right? So let them come out, and here's a tool to like calm yourself down, especially as moms. Like, we're finishing up a coaching session and someone's in high state of emotion. You don't want them to have to go off, usually like 2 minutes later they're chasing a child, or they're doing whatever, like putting in bed, or whatever they have to do and get on with life. You need to be able to like, okay, centered before you go on. So that comes up, that is where it's come up a lot
Definitely.
for me.
One of the I want to like address two things.
Yeah.
I realized that probably, so this is the motion, whether it's your hands or down your arm or your face,
Yeah.
that's happening. And what we want to do is we want to be in the moment, right? So we're giving ourselves a distraction. So whatever caused you to really need to like down regulate, is that then it's great if you have a favorite breathing practice. If you don't, inhaling in for 4 through your nose, exhaling out your mouth for 6. We want to always exhale longer than our inhale, just to kind of get you into that parasympathetic, right? Any of your other breathing techniques. Adding havening is going to get us into that delta state. So it's almost like supercharging whatever your meditation practice or calming practice is. Another nice thing is in the moment, especially if you're in a state of stress. And I'm not going to use the word overwhelm. And I know that we've been using it wrong. Thank you, Brene Brown. Because probably if you're in actual overwhelm, the stress is built up so bad that you're just now like a deer in the headlights, can't function, right? And if you're at that level, you're probably not even going to remember to haven. So that's kind of why I'm going to be careful not to use overwhelm. So stressed. And it's to is also is you can just do this really big long stretch and yawn. Big, 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 big. And yes, it's very exaggerated and you're supposed to, and just keep faking it. And you stretch as long as you can. And then you shake your arms out. And then you start to apply the havening. And you're going to do that 3 times. Then once you're getting into that havening, what you can do is if you choose to breathe and or notice, where's your feet? We're just going to put our attention on, feel my feet. Move my big toe. Okay. And now your eyes can be open or closed for this. If you can get to a place that you can start to close your eyes, if you feel safe to do that, you can get more in your body, right? That's what we're wanting while you continue havening, whichever of the 3 locations that you're at, and move them around. It's not like I picked one, I have to stay with it. Now I can't go to another one. Nope. It's a flow. You can go anywhere you want to go, right? So what's happening with my big right toe? Okay, now let me wiggle all my toes on my left side, right? And start noticing different body parts coming up. Notice the temperature. What does the back of my left hand feel like, right? Where are my shoulders? Are they still in my ears, or have they lowered a little bit to my chin, right? Just be in that moment and do a good body check. A third way that you can be using havening when you're in that stressful state is after you've done your stretches and your shake out and you're starting to apply the havening, is to just take a breath and just do a really long exhale to start, because that's probably what you need in those stressful moments, right? So making sound is good. That's always very helpful. And then kind of notice in the room. So let's start with notice 4 colors in the room and say it out loud if you can. If not, say it to yourself, that's fine. Then go down to what are 3 shapes I see in the room. Now let me see 2 things that are rough if I were to touch them, right? Let me pick something that would feel really warm, or something new that's that looks really, brings back good memories. So you've got this little checklist that you're going through. If you can give yourself up to 10 minutes, wonderful. That leads me into the other thing, is that the more you can haven, just for haven's sake, for haven's sake. Boy, that's a tagline. Because what we want to do is, and what you had said is how quickly you were able to go into that, and how quickly that it just took a little bit of havening when you're on the flight to get you calmed down and feel good in that moment, not, to feel much better on the flight, right? So what we're doing is, I know I keep going into the scientific, it's our amygdala. It's that fight, flight, freeze, fawn part of our brain. So we call her Amy. Amy's there to keep us alive and keep us safe. And Amy only knows what you focused on. And so if you can start your morning before you even get out of bed, you either pick a breathing or get a soft sound or get a favorite song you love, or sing a song and haven for 5 to 10 minutes. Starts your day. Then pick a time, several times during the day, set your alarm, or if it's during the start of your lunch break or whatever it is you're going to do, so that you get in at least 4 to 5 times in a day that you are havening, that you're choosing to haven. And then one of those might be like, oh my gosh, child had a meltdown. Oh my gosh, mommy had a meltdown. That could be one of those 5. That's totally good. But the more you're calming yourself down, what you're doing is you're telling Amy, we're good. We're safe. All that stuff out, we're good. So that when you do need to really call upon doing the havening, the breathing, then you're going to remember to do it, because it becomes muscle memory. You're going to be a much more relaxed mommy, and you're going to be able to then gift that and shine and share that with your children and with all the other people in your life, because we're going to show up better. We show up better when we're calmer, right? And when we can start teaching these tools to our children, that they can be, do the havening with a favorite song, right? And that becomes, we got to do that 2 or 3 times a day. You get a lot more havening in, so do they. They're now feeling safe in their world, right? And it's havening in that good stuff, collecting more of those smiles, right? I think you've used it with your daughter, right? Have you?
I've used it with both my kids, actually. So I have a 7-year-old actually, and a 4-year-old, and my 7-year-old daughter, well, both of them actually, when they get in a state. So the oldest especially can understand it a little bit more of what we're doing. So I'll say what can we do in that moment? And if she's really over in a stressful state, Amy's really strong, then she's like, I don't know. It's like, well, remember. And I'll kind of walk her through it. And I was like, you could just wash your hands. She's like, oh yeah, wash my hands. Okay. And we've all those things you described with the distraction techniques and such like that. I would say, just listening to what you just said, I was like, yeah, I want to do some more just positive havening throughout the day, so that it's not so much mom telling me to calm down with havening, right? And I think my son is just getting to the stage where he might be able to, where I was trying to get him to do it, but actually your description earlier made me think, with the mirror neurons, actually I'm just going to haven if he's doing that. I'm going to keep myself calm, and then he sees that and can use that as a tool. And I
Another
think he's
really good
just
one.
getting, yeah, I think he's just getting to the stage where maybe he might do it a little bit more. He came magically in the car the other day. He was just like, Mama, at school, I learned that when I'm feeling angry or sad, I just close my eyes and take a big breath. And I'm sitting there going, I've told you that like 60 million times. But it was school. That was the setting he needed for it to like properly kind of process, I suppose, in his mind. And I'm
we
like,
know how many times you have
fantastic.
to
I
hear
don't
it,
care.
right?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I don't, and it's great that that's what they're teaching. And now I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's just a matter of like, if I have it in front of him, then he'll be like, oh, what's Mama doing over there, right? So I think that was a really good point you said earlier.
Well, we know how many, in the research shows, the number of repetitions before it really gets in there, right? And especially for kiddos and for for me, for many times, I need to hear it over and over and over and over. I need to see it role played naturally over and over and over and over. And then one day I'm going to hear it in such a way that goes, oh my gosh, you just made sliced bread. Kind of a revelation, right? And it was like, and as parents, we go, wait a minute, I've been saying that all along. So the good thing is that, yes, thank goodness you've been planting that and showing that and being an amazing role model to your kids, so that when that extra piece outside was maybe, the 108th time that he heard it, it like all came together, right, in such an amazing way. One of the great things about younger kids too, or if somebody just isn't able in the moment, is that we can haven our animals. We can haven a pillow or a favorite blanket. You can have a stuffed animal that you just are applying some of that to, because you're still getting those benefits. You're still getting it. And anytime you've got your children or anyone in the environment that you have havening, is that you always want to be havening too, because their mirror neurons are going to be picking that up, and they're going to be getting it themselves, favorite blanket or a toy or something like that, even a pillow. As long as they're kind of doing that motion of it, they're still getting those really good chemicals. What we're doing is we're releasing that dopamine,
Yeah,
and the oxytocin and stuff. So love all those good chemicals.
yeah. And I think it's a really nice reminder of as well the fact that like when Amy, that amygdala is really strong, and we're not able to switch that other one just back on. If we've got high emotions, we're usually then I think as adults, it's a strong tendency to say, like, start beating ourselves up for like, oh, I got to think of, I got to turn my thinking brain on. That's not necessarily what someone would say, although I would, but it's, it's like, oh, why can't I think of this? Why can't I figure out how to do X, Y, Z? Right. And it's because,
Right.
well, you're freaking out about something, right? Like something
You're
is
hijacked
really
in the moment.
strong feeling in you, and it's impossible for our brain to go in the other direction until we help soothe that and calm it down a little bit, and then we're able to think and for ourselves, and also with that example of kids that you just gave, in the sense that like, my tendency is I might jump into like coaching mode, which might be like, okay, what can we do about this? Or like, oh, like, and you go down that road. But if they're still in high emotion, their thinking brain can't think of that answer. They don't know, right? They don't know the answer
Exactly.
unless we've trained it for a long time. So it's I think it's really important. And this is such a fascinating and fantastic tool to help us, our kids, anyone that we love in the world, to just calm ourselves down in that way. And self-havening, I'm very excited about the potential of that to like change the world. And
It totally does. And it allows us to, because as we both know in positive psychology, that kind of the positive emotions that spiral upward and outward, and we see so many great things, but then as that gets narrower and narrower to a neutral and gets more negative, we start going into a downward spiral. And we can't, when we're down here, we can't suddenly jump up even to neutral, much less to the positive, right? So it's that allowing your whole nervous system to kind of get a comfy, warm blanket. I mean, havening means safe place. So, I mean, for the Doctors Rudin to come up with that name, it matches it so well in such a nice way. And so it's really allowing Amy to kind of go, here's your security blanket. And so let's just let this all kind of go from that really deep, wide volcano of negativity and problems. And let's just slowly start bringing it, coming back up. And we do, especially those of us who know some of these tools. We want to put our coaching hat on, or we want to help them just turn it off and flip it and go to something positive and amazing and that kind of thing. And we didn't get there. We didn't become stressed. We didn't get to the edge of or into overwhelm in one step, right? It's that whole, this went wrong, now this went wrong, and now this went wrong, and now this went wrong, and now this went wrong. And this big old wrong, I can't just suddenly go back up to the world's wonderful. We have to kind of bring that in. So yeah, being able to get our nervous system to a place where it can now safely go where you're ready to go in that moment is wonderful. And if we can be havening when we have something that, for a child or for many of us adults, when we get sucked into that vortex, right? It's like the whole world is over. It's a big thing. And if we can use when we can use havening at the end of it, just to go, okay, oh my gosh, that's done. Nope. Let's do some distractions. Let's count backwards by, threes or whatever we decide to do as a distraction. Then we are also telling Amy, this wasn't something that we need you to write down in the record books to keep track of for later. We want to, so by being able to, at the end of a bad day or at the end of a big episode of something chaotic, give ourselves 10 minutes, give me a second, and then you go someplace quiet, or you get your favorite song that's, dancey, and you dance and you're havening with your hands and stuff. You're doing all that stuff, putting a smile on your face. Just the muscles in your smile is allowing those same good oxytocin and dopamine chemicals coming out, that then we're telling our brain, this is not a warning that I need you to put into the encoding so that, to look out for later. I'm good. I'm really good. I'm all good. Ending that in a very cushy way is going to keep those stories out of our out of Amy's playbook that she likes to throw up at us later and say, oh, we're not enough, or oh, see, that always happens, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, self-havening is amazing. See why it lights me up?
Yeah, I can see it. I can hear it in your voice. You always get lit up when we talk about this stuff. It's amazing. And tell me a little more about so I think when I probably first did hear about it, I'm like, what, why are our hands doing this? What is the science? What does that have to do with anything? How does this do something to my brain? How does going up and down my arm do something to my brain? What's actually happening in there?
What's happening is it's allowing the AMPA receptors of the neurons in our brain to actually open up, so that we're releasing the chemicals that allow, it's almost like a clean wash, right? And so so the way our brain is functioning, and the reason why we have those negative stories that get stored in our brain, is that let's go back to childhood. When I learned that rational thought, that magical section of our brain, does not turn on until the age of 13. For some people, it's a little later, but science has shown we don't have rational common sense. Okay, so now put that piece of information off to the side. Now I'm a child and I'm interpreting the world as good, bad, or indifferent. Every communication I'm having, everything I'm seeing between other people, because our brain doesn't know the difference between something I've experienced, something I've physically witnessed, or something I've heard. So we tell people, oh, let's use flowery language and describe it. Or, TVs and film have gotten to high def, XYZ, LMNOP by now, right? Everything to get your senses engaged. Well, all those things are also engaging and embedding stories and beliefs that the individual person has to decide, is it a good thing, is it a neutral thing, or is it a bad thing, right? And so these stories, we talk about it in story language. Stories get written in our amygdala. Amy's the master of that book, right? And so if we have experiences as a child, maybe we struggle with spelling, right? And spelling's a big thing in those first several years of school. And then if you go up and you have, live spelling competitions or whatever creative way the teacher chooses to do it, or you have your spelling tests every week and you get back a lot of red marks for wrong, or you get kids laughing at you, right? Because you didn't spell it right, or you speak with a lisp or whatever. Then little Tommy or Susie's is going to go, I'm a terrible speller. People don't like me. It could be I'm not accepted or wanted. It could be any number of stories that we tell, right? So Amy is just like this little secretary up there going, got it, no problem. Yep, I got that one too. Sure, I got this one, and collects this little notes and creates this roadmap of your beliefs. Those thoughts become over and over time become beliefs, and they're encoded. That's why when we say that everything, and again, remember, before 13, there is a lot of exposure. How do adults that you look up to and respect and love, how do they talk to you? How do they react to you when you're doing something well? Did they praise you? We know in our positive psychology, right, that the way we praise children can lead them into a more fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. Is it something that if I have to work hard at, which means, ooh, I don't want them to realize I'm really not very smart, so I'm not even going to do it because I can't do that, right? Versus a growth mindset that says that I'm having praise on my showing my strengths. I didn't give up. Yes, it was hard. And look, all the things that I learned from it. And because I had this skill, I've learned this skill, right? The more growth mindset way of learning and having exposure from all the adults in my life that are important, right? So that will also affect how I tell Amy, or how Amy's taking notes. Is she kind of taking notes from a growth mindset or a fixed mindset, right? So having all of that, it becomes this wired programming. And it's that wired programming. And now we have the more rational thoughts showing up to say, oh, okay, now we have this rational thought, but I can only apply that rational thought to the belief system I've already built and written in it that, is quote in stone. It's my playbook now. And so now the rational thought is going to, instead of saying, of course, you didn't cause mommy and daddy's divorce just because you had a bad grade that week, which, in reality, mommy always puts your report card on the refrigerator, no matter what the grades were. And the one day you brought home a B, mommy and daddy's fighting, and 2 weeks later, dad's gone. So that means I caused daddy to leave, right? That's the pattern, because there wasn't that rational thought. Rational thought now, Amy's going to look for proving you right. And this is your belief system. And you can't tell me it's wrong, right? Whatever you believe is your belief, is my belief, is your belief. So that rational thought and Amy are going to find ways to prove this right. And so that's where we get into that, self-fulfilling prophecy. The idea that the things I'm saying then are going to come true. Well, yeah, because it's driven by those beliefs, right? And even though I really wanted this job, or I really wanted to make the team, the story, that belief system, and my rational thought now is going to be, my belief system is, oh, I'm always lousy. They're always making fun of me. I'm picked last. And now here I am in middle school or high school thinking I can try out for the team. Of course, I'm not going to get it. And I'm sure they're not. Watch, I'm sure they're going to I'm going to be the last to be picked in, the team breakouts. And so when that then happens, because you've now held yourself differently physically. You're not like, I got this, let's go, let me pick me, and showing that. It's driving our behaviors, it's driving our action and inaction. And then our rational thought's going to go, see, I told you. Of course it's going to be, yeah, of course I am, because I'm just stupid. I don't have the gene. It was easy for them, it's not easy for me, right? So then it all starts working together.
Amazing.
I think I now forgot the question.
It's all right. It was basically a very general question of like, teach us everything about neuroscience. No, I think you got there. The question was just around like, what's going on up in our brain? Why does doing these movements, like, the up and downs in the face and the hands, what is actually going on in there? And, I think you got back to the gist of this is the way our stories are created. So then when we haven, what's actually happening to those stories?
If you're self-havening, which is what you would be doing at home, then that's like when I said, we're continuously providing it during the day all the time, then that muscle memory is going to keep telling Amy that we're good and safe, right? And so that when we have something happen, that we can then haven and find out all of our resilient tools to get us through that situation. Havening also is going to allow us to prevent or reduce the chance or the likelihood of it becoming a neuro encoded trauma, which is what then the other thing that havening that does is with a certified practitioner is that we work with those traumas from the past that we have those meanings for, that says I'm not safe, or whatever negative story that now got built around it that we have for a meaning, that we can now change the meaning we have around those stories and take away the reactions that our bodies are having, and allows us basically to show up instead of having those fears from it. Those, of course, are with a certified practitioner.
Yeah. And what does a certified practitioner do differently than self-havening?
A certified practitioner is going to guide you through a specific, whatever it is that you're working on, the fear. If it's an incident from the past, they're working on that, or something that you're working towards. So like for you, when you were first talking with me, it was like, man, I'm stuck. I've had this, I really wish I could be playing soccer again. And as that was all unfolding, figuring out what's blocking you, or what's the story that you're telling, and where's the event, and being able to really gently go in there and, through the havening, be able to open up and have this ability to change how that story is interpreted for you, the meanings around it, to desensitize and de-traumatize that event. And then the other part of that with the practitioner is building in those resilience tools. And like you had mentioned before, it's not about, oh, here's my book of affirmations. I can just start saying, I am, and give the whole long list. Well, the problem with that, and the reason why it doesn't work for so many people, is if that affirmation is in direct conflict with what Amy has in her little book that she was making, whatever her updated version, 823 version of what your beliefs are in that moment, if they're in conflict, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So with the practitioners also, as part of those, we have protocols and steps that kind of guide you through shifting that and being able to make that connection so that Amy then starts believing those.
Yeah. And choosing, I remember, going through that process with you and getting to this point where I realized that the trauma, quote unquote, of this injury was about a lot more than that 1 second or whatever it was that happened. Right. It was all sorts of other beliefs that I had in there around myself and my capabilities and worthiness and everything else that comes with it. And what was the second part of that? No, I've lost it there, but your point. Oh, and you also got me to this point then when I was able to realize that. And then it's like, okay, this is the belief. You did this amazing thing with like this, you say the word that it is, that's already like the belief that Amy has in her book there. And then you're replacing it with someone that, which maybe isn't in direct conflict, but it's like, this is what I want to actually believe. So that might be around my, let me think of what it was. So mine being my story I was telling myself is that I didn't handle it very well those next 2 years after that injury. And it, I wasn't good enough in so many ways. And the thing that you replaced that with was those words that I now say when I run, essentially, which was like, okay, what do you want to, I want to believe that I'm brave, and that actually, because that was so hard and I made it to the end, I am brave and I can believe that. Yep. Okay, let's do that. Right. Instead of like something, like you said, that direct conflict to what she is, it's more just like, okay, yeah, actually I am brave. And I trust that if I ever injured myself again, which we can't make any promises that's ever not going to happen, but that I can handle it. Right. That's the point of what we got to.
Yeah. And that's what the certified practitioner is going to know,
Yes.
all the protocols. So there's a lot more than started here and got here.
Exactly.
Which is beautiful. And the nice thing about, and the biggest difference with self-havening versus working with a practitioner is you don't need to know all those steps, right? Yeah. You're going through that and being able to live and notice those shifts and changes. And whereas in self-havening, being able to, you're not handling those big things that are hijacking you in life. It's more of a maintenance, and it's a preventative, right? It's let me build up my resilience. That's like the term of the day, right? How are you building your resilience is it's my dose of good mental health. I'm havening several times a day, and I'm having a lot of it with my favorite dance jam, right? Or my favorite whatever. I'm doing it with my children, and we're smiling and giggling. And I'm doing it when I start to feel a little bit of stress. And I'm doing it at the end of the day to kind of wash and, just think of the things that were a little bit negative or stressful, and then just do the havening and notice your breathing, notice your body, bring yourself into the now, place them. We have, a long list of different distractions, we call them, that you can do to then just kind of you're just taking care of Amy in the moment, and you're giving her lots of love throughout the day, so that she continues to know that in general, the world is safe and it's fun. It's not only safe, that's a neutral. If we think about that, right? We talk about that a lot. It's like in traditional therapies, there's a trauma, there's an event that's hijacked your life. And typically in the field of therapy, they bring you to neutral. What we want to do is yeah, we can take care of some of that negative stuff, and we can then notice and build so that we're thriving forward, right? We're not just waiting for neutral. And we have all these, we can use havening to build that resilience, so that when we get those bumps in the road, which that's life, right? That we can flow, we can ride them and keep going, and not have more of those encodings that we're trying to still fix. Yeah.
And what came up while you were speaking about that for me is that, self-care is something that, especially in the mom world, we're taught, like, everybody's like, how are you taking care of yourself today? And, like the things that often come up is like, oh, I haven't been to the spa in about 3 years. And we think of that as our self-care. And of course, that's definitely one method I highly recommend it. I'm a big fan of the spa. However, right. What you just said, of these examples of the times throughout the day that we can do this, there's no excuse that we don't have time. There might be an excuse around like changing habits is hard, so we have to build that in and work out how to have those and create those habits. But we can do it. We don't have to take a whole weekend away to self-care. Self-care is about building those resilience skills, as you say, and like we can just fit that into, even if we could only do a minute or like 3 minutes for a song or whatever, but we do that throughout the day, then we can all fit that in. We really can. It's just a matter of choosing. And well, we could do a whole nother episode on habit change, but
Exactly.
That being my point is that self-care can be a perfect form of it.
It totally is. And it's definitely been my primary go-to for self-care. And I was a single mom, raised two amazing young men. And it was like, I remember those times of feeling like I never have enough time. And now that I'm doing this more consciously and choosing and having these amazing tools, is that for me, it's my bathroom routine. So every time, and I'm trying to up my water, so that helps. So every time I'm going to the bathroom, the people are like, "Well, you take a long time in the bathroom." Yeah, because I'm going to go a whole 5 minutes or 3 minutes, and I'm havening, because if I'm sitting there, right, or if I'm in the shower, if you actually allow yourself to notice and just be there and feel that, I haven in the shower. It is the best. And I can just hum a song or what, even if I'm only putting a smile on my face and saying, what brings me a smile? And just thinking of things and havening and having that environment, right? So someplace that you are constantly allowing yourself and growing that self-care so that you can show up and be your best all the time. And what a role model that is, right? So not like hiding it, but showing it so that your children are picking that up and they're going to want it. And they're going to enjoy the mom that we get to be when we are at our best. Yeah. Or watching us bounce back from when we're not at our best. And they get to see that. Those are powerful lessons too. Yeah.
Hugely. Yeah. That's amazing, Caryl. So as we come to a close here, I wanted one final question is, so if you had one thing that you want people to take away from this conversation that we just had here, what would that be for you?
It would be that you deserve this type of self-care and to do it throughout your day, all day, and celebrate whatever it is that you're doing and allow yourself the gift of building your resilience and then pulling out the havening when you need it, also for that reducing stress as it pops up, and gift it to the kids. I mean, like, this is something you want to enjoy, and make sure that you're sharing it freely. Let that ripple effect happen.
That was so amazing. Thank you so much, Caryl.
Thank you.
Wasn't that so amazing to listen to Caryl talk about this incredible tool called havening? You can contact and connect further with Caryl on her LinkedIn profile at Caryl-Performance Specialist. That's on LinkedIn. And please do. Caryl is such an amazing and friendly person, as I'm sure you can tell from this interview. And havening is such a powerful tool that is literally in your hands and you can go and do right now and go even deeper with a practitioner such as Caryl. I know it's been a big part of my life ever since meeting her. So thanks for joining us. This has been Permission to Be Human, the podcast. And please, if you do anything from here on, as well as havening with your hands, then like the podcast, share the podcast with one or two friends who you think might benefit from the podcast as a whole, but also from this tool of havening that Carol's been speaking about. All right, speak to you soon.